Hope you enjoyed hearing about Garl Glittergold as much as I hated saying his name, because a lot of today's video is going to be about him. Yeah, when you say Garl instead of Carl, it sort of feels like you're swallowing the word. I'm not a fan. Anyways, if the halflings are sort of the merry, miniature version of humans, then the gnomes in a lot of ways are the merry, miniature versions of elves. They're lithe, long-lived, have a natural talent for magic, and are related to the Fae. Like with halflings though, that's where the similarities to their larger companions end. Gnomes are sort of a jumble of contradictions. They're humble, yet trailblazing, prefer to stay out of sight, but love to party. They aren't really considered the ambitious sort, but a gnome with a mind for invention can completely transform the landscape of a kingdom. So yeah, surprise, they're a lot like real people. Not to say that you're fake gnomes. You're real in my heart. Alright, let's get into it. So as the tale goes, it was the gnomish gods who were first born from gems deep within the world. Then, Gargullergold took a look at the pantheon and said, you know, it would be awesome if there was more of this. And then wouldn't you believe it, he was on a stroll one day when he encountered a cave just full of little guys. Legend says that the sturdier rock gnomes were born from diamonds, while forest gnomes and deep gnomes were born from emeralds and rubies respectively. When Garl found them, the gnomes were still trapped in these gems. And how did Garl break them out? With a pun. Garl told them a joke so funny that they busted out of their gems with laughter, and the gnomish race was filled with a sense of joy and merriment on the spot. So I don't know if there's a god associated with bards, but if there is and it isn't Garl, I'm filing a complaint. Things were pretty hunky-dory for the gnomes after their creation, but the party didn't last forever. In fact, it wasn't super long at all before the dragon swooped in and said, actually, let's find more gems please. Kobolds immediately began the enslavement of the gnomes at the behest of a green dragon named, Kazinzajak? Yeah, I'm saying that right. For sure. Either way, the very mean dragon was running the show for the kobolds at the time, and Garl Glittergold was not having it. He collapsed the mine where the kobolds were digging for souls, nearly wiping them out in one move. Pretty metal for a guy who's functionally a leprechaun with a giant axe. Which, yeah, by the way, Garl just has a magical talking axe at his side at all times named Aramunda the Justifier. Apparently they're pretty chill.
You're beautiful and capable of great things, like murder. Don't do that though, unless it's completely necessary.
After these events, gnomes spread throughout the Feywild of the material world, founding their own burrows and villages, but also frequently living amongst the other races of D&D. In a move surprising nobody, forest gnomes made their homes amongst the forest. Rock gnomes like to build complex burrows into the ground, but also were commonly found in cities, and deep gnomes took to the Underdark. Yeah, and on that note, while rock gnomes and forest gnomes generally look the same, the deep gnomes suffered the same fate that all Underdark subspecies do, that in living in the Underdark messes you up. I mean, it doesn't cosmetically mess up the drow, because elves are contractually obligated to be hot, I guess, but everyone else just, turns purple and looks really unhealthy or mean. It's a bad deal, with some really not great history in the real world, and it kind of only gets worse. Gnomes were in large part shaped by their environment, just like all the other societal species in D&D. For deep gnomes, that meant being shaped by the harsh environment of the Underdark. They are known to be more brutal and willing to steal than the rest of their kin, in a sense coming a lot closer to the behavior that some would say resembles kobolds, which will happen when you live in what is almost definitionally the wrong neighborhood. Most gnomes, however, are content to stay out of sight and out of mind to avoid conflict. Forest and rock gnomes did this by building homes deep into the ground and around the dens of small animals like weasels. Remember the dire weasels we mentioned in the last episode? Well, our buddy Garl also has a love of weasels and likes to use some mounts too. Of course, he also has a fondness for badgers, dire badgers, because of course they're a thing too, along with squirrels and other little furry guys. A love of celebration, the arts, and pranks stays fairly consistent among all gnomish societies. If you want a good time, you go hang out with the gnomes. Easy in most cities, but pretty dang hard literally anywhere else. Human cities frequently played host to many gnomish teachers, shopkeepers, spellcasters, and simple blacksmiths. They typically left the complicated stuff to the dwarves, but a gnome would have been responsible for crafting the locks on your doors, the mugs at your favorite tavern, or the pots in your kitchen. Gnomes also did take to adventuring, a minimum requirement to get added to the list of main D&D player races. It wasn't a typical thing for gnomes to do though, since gnomish culture generally values not standing out and not getting in the way of others. It's sort of like the Scandinavian concept of Janteloven, if you've ever heard of it. If not, look it up. It's very interesting, especially from the perspective of an American. The gnomish gods are known as the Lords of the Golden Hill, which is absurdly cool, because of course it is. The gnomes aren't really prone to worshipping them, even though they carry a deep sense of oral history and generally treat them with respect and reverence. And I know that sounds a lot like worship, but it's more like how a lot of Americans are born into Christianity. Like, yeah, they go to church during Gnomish Easter, but that's really it? I'm thinking that's just what happens when you put a god of jokes, luck, and generally chill behavior at the head of the pantheon. Despite the small number of true worshippers amongst the gnomes, their gods remain committed to looking out for their people. They don't appear before the gnomes or even try to talk with them very often, but rather they send down avatars who blaze new trails and tear down ancient enemies on behalf of the gnomish people. You know, it didn't occur to me until this moment that, yeah, different gods from different D&D worlds are going to interact with their followers differently and in interesting ways. Ain't that something? Naturally, Garl has most of the followers amongst any of the gods. Novice priests of his clergy are referred to as the Uncut, while full priests have the honor of being called Jewels. Neither of these titles, however, compared to what his clerics are called, which is Glitterbrights. Glitterbrights tend to fight using axes with an eye painted on them, probably in honor of Armdina, and sport golden war helms and belts into combat. Most Glitterbrights also belong to the Trickery domain, which means their abilities are the classic Invoke Duplicity, creating an illusory clone of yourself, and also Cloak of Shadows, a simple invisibility cast. Garl is, however, also a protector god, so plenty of clerics take on other domains that swing closer to healing and defensive magic or physical combat. So you're not boxed into a corner if you were thinking of playing a Glitterbright. As you might expect, the Lords of the Golden Hill are largely aligned with good, with the key exception being Erdlin. Erdlin is a mindless, evil cretin who only seeks to destroy and make things stinky. The only reason why he's even part of the Pantheon is that Garl wanted to remind the gnomes that life isn't all gumdrops and rainbows. He typically takes the form of a steel-clawed, blind mole rat, but does also maintain a more gnomish-esque form as well. Apparently, at one point, there was also several ladies of the Golden Hill, but there wasn't much information that could find on them. All I know for sure is that apparently whenever the lords or any gnome that might know something is asked about it, they tend to speak vaguely and in tones of sadness or mournfulness, so that's not great. The gnomish gods are known for holding many a secret, but this is a particularly dark and enticing one to the gnomes. So much so that many gnomes going on adventure would rather say that they're searching for the ladies of the Golden Hills rather than explaining their true intentions. Whether or not these ladies are actually out there, however, remains to be seen. Who knows? Maybe one day we'll get a new adventure guide about it. And that's a wrap on Gnomes, y'all. Heads up, for our next video we're going to be pivoting towards another one of our favorite game worlds, Destiny. Destiny is another one of those franchises that Matcha and I are just in love with, and with the new season well on its way, we thought it would be a good idea to jump in and cover some lore. So, is there anything in particular you all would want to see from the lore of Destiny or D&D? Let us know in the comments. Alright, bye, remember to hydrate, good night.